Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 5. I also just realized we kind of forgot to do our
Oh
at the
yeah,
beginning, like we love this beer.
check it out.
Yeah, just like we did last week. We're kind of in the Fest Beer Märzen. It's just that time of year, so we thought we'd feature one of the classic examples, which is Hacker Pschorr Oktoberfest Märzen. Chris, what's the Best Buy date on yours? Mine says March 24.
Mine does too, so I think that's March of 2024.
Yeah.
And there's a lot number that I don't know or care to decode, but I think most German beers of this size brewery put about a year on it.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, I was gonna guess 9 months minimum
yeah.
or
Sometimes
something
it's
like
nine.
that.
I think Pilsner Urquell, the Czech beer does nine,
Yeah.
but some of them, just like we kind of hate, not or maybe not hate, but we see seasonal creep coming for
Just
the American ones. The German ones imported here maybe come a little earlier too. I see you just like showing pictures
absolutely.
through your
Sorry. Yeah.
beer.
Sorry. I'm just like, yeah. It's like, hey, everybody, it's so clear.
Yeah,
Oh my
I'm at a
gosh.
friend's house, so I've got I got a wine glass going, which is because I'm
Nice.
fancy.
Yeah.
Look
Looks
at
great in
that.
either. Looks great in either one. Looks
You can
just
see
awesome.
the art on the wall behind my beer.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Oh man.
All right, cool. Let's jump into the recipe for the Märzen style. You also again might just see it called something like Oktoberfest, or just Märzen or Oktoberfest Märzen. But this particular commercial example is coming in at 5.8% ABV. They give some pretty good info on some of their ingredients for hops. They've got Hallertau Hercules, which I'm guessing is going to be probably the main bittering hop. I think a lot of people talk about Hallertau just by itself, but there's kind of lots of different. There's Hallertau Mittelfra, Hercules, Hallertau Tradition, which is one of the other hops that they use. So it looks like it's all Hallertau varietal of some kind. Sort of single hop esque, if you will. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, Hallertau is just a hop growing region, right? So you can
Right.
grow. It's well known for middle fruit hops, but you can grow all kinds of different hops there. So
Yeah, exactly. And then this is the most interesting to me. The malts that they give are the malt varieties, not the it's not like Munich malt or Vienna. They just give, it's weird. Yeah, they give these varieties. So it's Marth, Marthe, Grace, and Catamaran.
oh yeah, so it's actually the varietal of barley, not
Right.
the type of malt, basically, the
Right.
degree of kilning on the malt. So it's probably just like Munich kilned versions of each of
Right.
those varieties of barley.
Exactly. So that's fascinating. But I searched all of them. Didn't seem like one of them was like totally traditionally used for one, sort of malt kilning process than another. Much like many of the barley varieties, they're pretty, you can pretty much use them for lots of different things in terms of malt. So
Yeah, and
you're not
there's,
really you're not
it's a
really
fun,
pigeonholed.
yeah, and I have a lot to learn about barley varieties still, but it's you'll see from time to time a brewery stressing that they used, Heraclea Pilsner malt, which is like a Mediterranean kind of style Pilsner malt, or like Barca Pilsner you see a lot, or other heritage varieties of like English barleys coming back and stuff. So that's kind of cool that they're just being specific about the variety.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I also think a very interesting way to give a lot of information, but also really kind of keep your secrets. So I think that's
Yeah,
fun.
right.
But for a style like this, it's traditionally going to be things like probably a lot of Munich malt, and then maybe some Pils or Vienna mixed in there, kind of depending on um, what kind of the profile they're shooting for. It's more going to be like I think the BJCP kind of mentions something to the effect of it's a little bit less about the varietals necessarily that you're choosing, but just more kind of the percentages, and it's more about kind of the brewer than varietals necessarily that they're choosing, because there's lots of different reasons to choose a variety. For some people it's about consistency. For some people it could be the style that they're making. They might want some specs to be in certain ranges or not in certain ranges when it comes to things like protein, or beta glucan or something like that. And for others it might just be you want to use stuff that's hyper local, and so you're just getting the stuff that's close and you just want it fresh. And kind of whatever those are, you're going to kind of work your way into whatever styles those are going to kind of lend themselves to. Is that kind of what your kind of understanding is too?
Yeah, I think so. And we're not talking about anything too far out of the box for this style. It's going to be just kind of the combination of barley malts that gives the brewer the correct color and flavor profile, and enough starch conversion and all that good stuff. And so this is a beer that Hacker Pschorr makes like ungodly amounts of, I'm certain.
Yeah.
So I don't think they've tinkered with this recipe, because a German would sniff that out
Mm-hmm.
immediately for many, many years. But it's also, throwback to our previous video, this kind of more amber style is not really the beer served at Oktoberfest now. So this is kind of, pre 1990 Oktoberfest. This was the more popular style, a little bit darker. And that's what Americans in particular have come to know as Oktoberfest beer. You already had the call to say, look, the label might say Fest beer, it might say Oktoberfest beer, it might say Märzen, it might say Oktoberfest Märzen. And all this stuff is like sort of tricky to decode in the United States, because everybody has their own relationship to drinking these German style imports over the long term or whatever. But the German brewers, if it says Fest beer, it's going to be pale. If it says Märzen, it's going to be amber. Um, and there's not as much to decode on it. And so this one says Oktoberfest Märzen, like clarifies it's going to be the darker kind of like amber style. It is. It's just really like amber to orange. It's got like this really vibrant
Yeah, almost like a really
orange
deep,
character.
almost it's something that I wish we could use more in terms of like color descriptors, is just how certain coppers or metals kind of oxidize in ways that kind of give off these orange hues, but you just can't, because people are going to be like, they can tell it's oxidized just by the appearance. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So you can't really, even though that describes the color, but I think we kind of, we started to kind of substitute with kind of like, this is like a really deeply bronzed, like amber, but with a little bit of kind of like a orangish, kind of hue to it, I would say.
yeah. I like that language of bronzed, because you're not kind of connoting that it's oxidized. It's brighter. It's not a dull color, even though it's in the amber, orange, rust spectrum. So
Yeah,
very beautiful beer. I mean, if
absolutely.
you're watching instead of listening, you can see just right through the thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then to wrap up recipe, just a couple of other things. This is obviously going to be made using lager yeast. Shouldn't be pretty much any yeast characteristics that are perceivable in the finished beer. Obviously, this leads to a long period of lagering, and then also this is going to be something that undergoes a decoction mash, which is taking a thick portion of the mash and then bringing it up to kind of like a higher starch conversion temperature for a small amount of time, and then bringing it up to a boil to develop some more flavors, kind of help to acidify the mash a little bit too, and then also it helps a lot with lautering. It kind of helps decrease the viscosity. It converts a lot of, and if there is there shouldn't be any under modified proteins with, all of the, modern malts that we have, but anything that would be left over in that regard, would be, through heat, would be broken down into something much more simple and make lautering just a breeze, and helping you to, further get to such a clear beer like this one.
And this one finishes at 5.8% alcohol by volume, which is like pretty standard for this kind of beer.
Yep,
I see a lot of
very standard.
5.7, 5.8, up to 6. I like that it's just a smidge lighter in alcohol. And I thought it's always a funny thing with Oktoberfest beers. You almost have to like readjust your expectations for defining like richness or heaviness of beers. Because if you read, um, German blurbs about these style of beers, they are brewed to a higher strength, right? The vast majority of beer drunk in Germany is Helles type, Pilsner type, in that more like 4.5% to 5.5% range. And so 5.8 to 6% is literally a heavier beer. Um, but for American expectations too, for those of you downing a couple of like 6.5 to 7.5 IPAs all the time, it doesn't seem like this is that much heavier, right? So you see all these descriptions of rich, bready, all these flavors that we're going to get into, and you kind of have to like reset your expectations. And then I thought the other thing that's funny about that is it's like all the German write-ups are like it's, rich, seasonal, heavy lager or whatever. And then they're out there drinking liters of this stuff.
Yep, absolutely. All right, cool. I think we've been already kind of getting ahead of ourselves here for sensory. We've kind of really already talked about the clarity, the color. There's a beautiful kind of off-white, cap of foam that's got pretty good retention, and in the aroma, I mean, it's like I would venture to say there's a touch of Vienna in here potentially. I'm getting a little bit of grape nut, a little bit of that kind of like Italian seasoned, crouton, and then even to that point, I think it's almost like this impression of like when I smell, herbs like that. They do have maybe a little hint of like a citrusy note to them, and I'm almost getting something like that. But of course, the entire like backbone is just like totally just freshly baked bread, like right out of the oven, just toasted bread crust.
Yeah, I was gonna say bread crust. Yeah, just fresh bread crust. It's not even like that toasted. You're not getting.
No.
I'm not getting too much like caramelized or like roasty type character. But yeah, I really resonate with the grape nut call. That
Yeah.
is something that even this particular beer. This is one of my favorite Märzens every year. It just has this like grape nut quality to the malt character that I think a lot of other, particularly American interpretations, don't really achieve. And so it sticks out for me in that sense. It's like you said, baked bread, kind of verging on crouton, because you do get a little bit of like a um, lightly floral and herbaceous aroma. It's difficult to tell exactly where that's coming from, but it kind of comes together as, like you said, like a seasoned crouton or seasoned bread.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and then on the palate, that all kind of drives through pretty much the same. Not much changing there.
Yeah, it's really true to the aroma, right? You get just like
Hmm.
waves and waves of freshly baked bread is just the main driving note. And I think the hoppiness is pretty low. It's just enough to kind of keep sweetness in check. The beer finishes pretty dry, and
Yeah.
there's a just this hint of balancing bitterness, but it doesn't have a ton of flavor. It's slightly reminiscent of, some, herbs. Is about it. It'd be tough to say specifically what kind, but that's sort of what it's meant to be, right? It's supposed to add some structure to the beer and not leave it just like sweet and cloying on your palate, so that you can have a couple liters of this at the festival. So
Yeah, I think that's one of the most wonderful things about the style is that there's tons of impressions of sweetness and things that prepare you for sweetness. But when you drink it, like you said, the finish is dry enough. There's enough bitterness to balance all of that, that you can just keep going back for another drink. And it's no wonder that this was the beverage of Oktoberfest for so long.
exactly, yeah, and I think we'll find, since this, you and I love pairing beers in this amber spectrum with food,
Right.
just because they kind of exist in this middle zone where you can get away with carrying some things with them a little bit lighter, a little bit heavier. There's just like a lot of stuff to play with. And even though this beer doesn't have like a ton of fermentation character, obviously, because it's a lager, it does have, the big advantage that beer has over every other fermented beverage is Maillard character.
Yeah.
And so, I imagine we're going to talk a little bit about how this plays with or replaces bread in a lot of meals and stuff. And amber to brown beers just fit that so well. So they're really fun to play with food pairings. Do you have
Yeah.
something you're gravitating toward immediately?
Yeah, the first thing I was kind of leaning towards that I thought would be fun would be like a roast beef sandwich. But I thought maybe to kind of
Mm,
help to play into some more kind of some a little bit of like some potential increasing of the complexity of malt character, but also some interesting kind of hop character would be maybe to use like a bun that's been like a homemade bun, but then you've kind of given it some everything seasoning on top, and then
mm,
bake the buns to kind of add a little bit of everything that's going on in that particular seasoning. And then when you're going with roast beef, I think you also just have a lot of room to play with different sauces. You can go with something that's got a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of vinegar in there, like a barbecue sauce. You can go with something that's got a little bit more heat to it, like horseradish. You could also go with something that's also just kind of in its own kind of like a coleslaw, maybe based like a Russian or even like a Russian dressing. I think
yeah.
would be super interesting. That's got a little bit of pickle in there, kind of like Thousand Island adjacent. I think that would be super interesting as well. That was the first savory pairing that I came up with. What did you end up at?
Well, first of all, that's great too, because those dressings, a lot of them have both a creamy component, which is a great kind of like binder for all of these flavors going on, and also a little bit of an acidity component too, which is a nice touch as well. My savory thought was like a roasted root vegetable salad. So you get some beets and some potatoes going, get those roasted up to match up with the Maillard character a little bit. And then you can sprinkle some fresh, like arugula, to really kind of let that pepperiness stand in for some of the lack of hop character. And so you've got this like kind of starchy meal that you're just driving a wedge and breaking up with this Märzen lager. And I think that would be super nice. And it also, I think there's a potential that, given how deeply bready and toasty the beer is, that it can be the stand-in for like a crouton. I don't even think that salad needs bread. It's already kind of heavy with beets and potatoes, and so just let this be the liquid bread component. It's got plenty of um, carbonation cutting power, and just that Maillard matchup with the roasted character of those root vegetables. That's what was singing to me. And you could even make like a mustard style dressing for that to put on that salad, so that you've got this homage to some kinds of like German potato salad or pretzel and mustard, but you're not literally having that dish. You're having a different dish that gives you some of that spicy mustard character instead.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, the other one I landed on, kind of trying to, potentially get away from kind of an American centric cuisine, was looking at Chinese pork dumplings. Just getting that really hard sear on the one side, while you kind of are steaming the other side to soften up the wrap. And then you can, like you said, you can play with with whatever's inside the dumpling. You could go pork. You could go with like like a vegetable. You could go with like a vegetable dumpling to again kind of bring more of these like sweet flavors from the beer and earthy flavors from the vegetables. And then if you're
Mm.
dipping that in soy sauce, you're just getting big time salt, sweet and salt, which is something that we're just always trying to. It seems like we're always trying to find. So that was something that I thought could be an interesting pairing, and that's when I actually decided to go and buy some stuff to make dumplings, so I can. I'll try that with Märzen this week and see if I can confirm that theory.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that'll be great. I didn't have a second savory pairing in particular. Obviously, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that, at festivals and Oktoberfest style celebrations, it's just a row of sausages and pretzels and all kinds of like German fare, that this is just gonna wedge in there right nicely and just be kind of the togetherness piece for everything, kind of hold the whole party together with Nixon. So that would be that would be great.
Yeah.
But dessert, is kind of a little bit harder, I think, because it's not particularly sweet. If you get like an old malt shifted Märzen or something, or some American interpretations that use like caramel malt or whatever to try to mimic a little of the Maillard character, and those are a little bit sweeter. But this is not like very caramelly, you know. It's just way more toasted bread to me. So maybe we could um, use that to our advantage. And what I wanted to do was I wanted a pretzel dessert, and like strawberry pretzel salad, they call it. It's so funny they call it strawberry pretzel salad, but it's just a strawberry square with pretzel crust on the bottom, and then like a layer of lightly sweetened kind of like cream cheese whipped topping, and then like a strawberry jello and fresh strawberries thing on top. But I want to switch it. I don't want to do strawberries. So I want everything to be the same, except I want to do blueberry, and I want to do like a blue jello to make a play on the Bavarian flag. So just make a whole
Nice.
sheet of plain ones that are just the white, and make a whole sheet of the blue ones, and you can cut those into sort of like diagonal like squares, and then serve those up together, and it looks like a checkered Bavarian flag.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
so that'll be fun. But then the main anchor for the whole pairing is just that salty
Yeah.
crust, that salty pretzel crust, which is just that gets back to our sweet and salty thing. That dessert by itself does the sweet and salty thing, but then the beer, really matches up with that baked pretzel, that dry baked pretzel character, and a fruit, and something lightly sweet like a Jello and a blueberry is not so sweet. It's kind of like a little bit tart and a little bit sweet, but it's that fresh kind of sweetness that it's not like you're trying to get this 5.8% bready beer to hold up to like caramel delights or something like that, which is maybe possible, but it's a little bit more of like a fresh fruit pairing with light sweetness in my mind, and then you just have all that salty crunch bringing up the back end. So I thought that would be fun.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking in the same realm, just kind of trying to figure out what's going to be what's going to be a good anchor, and then what could maybe bring some interesting contrasts. And I ended kind of at like a sour cherry pie, because I
Ooh.
think the cherry flavor is still going to be super interesting in a beer like this. I think that's just going to match up with a lot of that Maillard character. You can play with some spices. I think in the pie too, if you wanted to go like cherry and cinnamon or something like that, you could add a little bit, because cinnamon is in desserts, but it kind of lends itself to a little bit more of like an earthy kind of flavor, or even kind of starting to lean more towards savory, especially when it gets stuck in the oven for a while, and something like a pie. The only thing I would think is also potentially trying to figure out how can I get something that's maybe in more of like because I really would want like a graham cracker crust, kind of pie crust, because you're getting that buttery character, and that I think once you're getting graham cracker butter and all these bready notes, you can just about add blueberry, strawberry, I think, at the end of the day. But I don't know if cherry would necessarily be that. I think you just want kind of your traditional kind of flaked pie crust, which is still going to be fine. You're going to get kind of those buttery, flaky layers, and you're still going to get something similar to that. But that was something I was really trying to have be the anchor there for a bit.
Yeah, graham cracker is such a good idea. Whether you do a regular pie crust or graham cracker, but graham there's almost like graham cracker crust is not that sweet, right? It's like
Right.
like
Yeah.
if you just eat a graham cracker, it's almost like it's just barely honeyed. It's just got a little
Yeah.
bit of sweetness, and otherwise it's just a cracker. And so, man, that sounds like a good, like very light crust pairing with this beer. I like that a lot. It's almost
Yeah.
suggestive of graham cracker without being sweet.
Yeah. No, I think and I like your addition of that too, to potentially something to bridge to kind of just that undertone of honey, just trying to make sure there's just another sort of latch in the bridge, to make sure that the pairing holds up. I think that's
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, sweet. That's pretty good. This we didn't just pick this one because it's my favorite. This is also just one of the easiest ones to find. So I hope you go pick up a pack. And if you're anything like us, you're going to be picking up a bunch of different Oktoberfests for the whole season. So yeah, grab a few and do some food pairings of your own, and just enjoy the season. It's one of the best beer drinking seasons, in my humble opinion.
Exactly. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 5. For next week, we are going to be doing an interesting one. We're going to be doing Chimay Cinq Cents, but there's something a little bit different about this particular year. There's something Chris was able to snag something unique, and so we're excited to try it for the first time. It's still Chimay 6 cents, but there's something slightly different about it that we're really curious about and we were really excited about. But thank you again. Thank you for tuning in. For everybody who's subscribed already, we appreciate all of the support. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to put out as much content as we can. We're trying to do these videos once a week. I'm trying to throw up some shorts from all the stuff we were doing on Instagram Live once a week as well. So again, please make sure to check out the channel and subscribe and just support us so that we can continue to talk about great beer and do all these food pairing exercises. And it means a lot to everybody who's supporting us. And Prost, and I hope everybody has a good Oktoberfest and Fest beer season, and we will see you all next time. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.